In this week's show, we continue our series on how to full-time RV. We'll take a look at how we get our mail on the road and setting up your state of residency. Hi kids, welcome to the channel. I'm Mike.
I'm Tony.
This is our RV sunset. So we are a couple in our mid-50s with a crazy dog that likes to be crazy whenever we film. And we full-time in a Brinkley Z3100. I want to welcome you to our series on how to full-time RV. This is the 5th video in the series. We are going to be covering how we get our mail, and we're also going to be covering residency status. One quick note on verbiage here. The term residency and domicile, we're going to kind of use those interchangeably. They mean the same thing. Domicile is the legal term for the state in which you live.
You need a full-time residence to pay your taxes or register to vote, get your insurance, register your vehicles.
A simple solution is to remain a resident of the state that you were a resident of before you went full-time. You could keep your property there and use that as your address. You could also ask a friend or family member if you can use their address as a place of residency, have your mail sent there, they can forward it along to you. That's the easy way to do it.
That's really easy. Mm-hmm. But if you're like us and sold your property in your former state of domicile, you may decide to change it up a little bit. There are 3 states that make it easy for full-time RVers to set up a domicile. The 3 most friendly states are South Dakota, Texas, and Florida.
So the first thing that we want to do is kind of go through some of the simple pros and cons of each one of those states. So first, let's start with Florida. What are the pros of domiciling in Florida? Well, for starters, there is no state tax in Florida. There's also no mandatory length of stay before you can get residency or domicile in Florida. It's a good winter place to stay. Florida is much warmer than the rest of the northern part of the country during the winter. With Florida, you can get nationwide healthcare coverage that's available through the Affordable Care Act. One caveat on that, I will say that we are recording this in February of 2025. All of that may change with the way the politics are in the country right now. Cons. Florida gets crowded, especially during the winter. It gets really, really crowded. So that might be a con for you. It might be too people-y. There is higher sales tax in Florida than in other states. And also you're going to find that vehicle insurance is going to be more expensive in Florida. A lot of this has to do with the hurricanes that roll through there seemingly every single year now.
That and the age of everybody there. They're all old people. Like us.
Like us. We're old people too.
So, what's next? That's
easy for you to say.
Now let's look at Texas. Texas pros. No state taxes, no inheritance tax. And if you're getting old like us, you got to think about this stuff.
Yeah.
They also have nationwide health insurance available through the Affordable Care Act. Again, caveat, February, politics, things are crazy.
That could all change.
Texas con. If the vehicle has a gross vehicle weight rating of over 26,000 pounds, you have to get a special driver's license.
But it's not just Texas. There's quite a few states that require that kind of stuff.
All right.
Lastly, let's look at the pros and cons of South Dakota. The pros, there is no state income tax. So that makes all 3 of those, all 3 states, no state income tax. There's also no inheritance tax in South Dakota, if that's important. You only need to spend 1 night in the state to get your residency. This can be in a hotel, this can be in an RV park. Let's look at the cons of South Dakota. First off, there is no nationwide health insurance available through the Affordable Care Act. Another big con is voting restrictions. If it's important to you to vote, and it should be important to you to vote, South Dakota has some restrictions on registering to vote. To register to vote, you need to stay in the state for 30 days in what they're calling a fixed dwelling. There's a bit of confusion going on right now about what a fixed dwelling is. It could mean that it can't be in an RV. That's still kind of being worked out. Before you can register, you need to sign a voter affidavit that you completed this 30-day stay, and the address that you use cannot be a postal mailbox address. At this point in time, the state is rejecting those postal mailbox addresses as an address to register to vote. One caveat on this is that you can still get what's called a national ballot, where you will be able to vote at the national level, which means representatives, senators, and president, but you won't be able to vote on local races or local ballot measures.
So which state did we choose? For us, it was South Dakota. Looking back, honestly, I think emotions had a lot to do with it, because we had visited South Dakota and just fell in love with it. And it's one of those places that we visited and said, you know what, I could live here. The other two, Florida and Texas, not so much for us.
Yeah, well, we really haven't been to Florida and stayed a long time. I mean, we've done jobs in Florida, so we've been there for a week or so. But Florida is also all the way on the other side of the country. I still have relatives here in San Diego. Our son and daughter-in-law live in Kansas City, so to go all the way to Florida just wasn't all that worthwhile
enticing
for us. It wasn't all that enticing. That's the perfect word for it. All right, so with the pros and cons out of the way, next let's look at the process that we had to go through to set up our domicile in South Dakota.
So the first step to setting up a domicile is to have a place for your mail to land. We use a place called Dakota Post as our mail service. We'll put the link in the show notes below. How mail service works is any physical mail that you have goes to the mail service. They scan the envelopes, and then they send you an email with those scans, and you can pick, like junk mail, you can just get rid of. It's so great. So they scan everything, and you can go in and you can click which things that they will open so you can see what's in them.
So when you want to see what's in them, they'll then scan what's inside
They'll scan what's inside. You can also view these on their website too.
Oh, so they don't even have to email it. You
Right.
can just
You can just go in and check it.
copy that.
If you physically need a piece of mail, they have multiple ways that they'll mail it to you. FedEx, the regular postal service, overnight, priority, all of them. You have a whole bunch of choices that you could pick depending on how fast you need to get that piece of mail.
And then any mail that you don't need, what do they do with it?
They shred.
Nice.
It's great.
A couple of caveats on these mail services. Due to HIPAA regulations, they won't open anything medical. If there's any medical information, it has to be sent to you. They do take packages, but you'll pay shipping on those. Honestly, we both tend to use Amazon Prime for any packages that we need to get, and we'll have it sent to either the RV park that we're at or sent to an Amazon locker somewhere near where we are.
Mm-hmm. Another reason we went with Dakota Post is they not only handled the mail service, mail forwarding service, but they handled everything else. The vehicle registrations, they helped us with our driver's license. Even moving our business, you can hire what's called a registered agent through them that represents you. So when you go to transfer your corporation over to South Dakota, you have it. And it was reasonable, and so far, everything has worked beautifully with them.
So now we have our home address through our mail service. The next step is to go online and set up all of those different accounts that send you stuff, things like bills, things like bank statements, stuff like that. Set those up to be delivered via email or delivered online.
Because honestly, that's the way to do it these days.
Side note here though, leave at least 2 of those things physically going to your postal service mailbox. And the reason that you want to do that is that you're going to need 2 pieces of mail that show that postal service mailbox address on them when you go to get your driver's license and to get your domicile in your new state. For us, we had bank statements sent there and credit card.
I had one bank statement from a small bank account that I had, and I had one credit card from a small credit card that I had. Lastly, submit your change of address to the post office at the location that you're leaving to have it forwarded to your new mail service.
All right, now that you have your address established, the next step is getting your driver's license and submitting your domicile affidavit, your domicile paperwork. The first thing to do is gather all of the required paperwork that you're going to need. We needed the following. First, a proof of lawful status like a birth certificate, passport, or certificate of citizenship.
Second, you need proof of Social Security. This is either your Social Security card or real statements of a W-9 or a W-2 or a 1099 or a real copy of your payroll receipt with the Social Security number on it. You can't use copies.
Would a pay stub work?
Pay stub.
Okay. You also need a signed residency affidavit. We got ours from Dakota Post. They just sent it to us so that we could have it filled out before we went to the DMV. You can actually get it at the DMV though if you don't have it beforehand.
That residency affidavit was a little confusing to me at first because at the bottom it says need to be signed by a notary or somebody from the DMV. So I thought I was going to have to get a notary. No, after talking to several people, I was informed you just take it to the DMV. The person that is doing the transaction with you works at the DMV and they can sign it. You also need a receipt for your one night stay, whether it's the RV park, whether it's a hotel, whatever, you need a receipt. Here is a pro tip that somebody taught me, fortunately before we went and did this, was it needs to have both you and your spouse's name on it.
Yeah, because you're both applying for a residency, so you have to show that you both stayed one night in South Dakota. You will need those 2 pieces of mail from your mail service mailbox with that address on them. They must be no older than a year and they cannot be handwritten.
And again, please note, they all have to be original. They can't be photocopied or downloaded from your computer and printed. Next thing is you have to go to South Dakota and stay in a park. We stayed in a state park, but we also stayed in several RV parks just in case.
Okay, now we had all of our paperwork, we had all of our ducks in a row. It was time to make an appointment at the DMV. The DMV appointment does not need to be in the same county as your domicile is in. For instance, we're domiciled in Minnehaha County, which is Sioux Falls, but we actually went to the DMV in Rapid City.
I just like saying Minnehaha.
Yeah, right. The last step was to go to the DMV appointment, to submit our residency affidavit, and to get our driver's license. For the driver's license, there was no written test or no driving test, but we did have to take a vision test. Oh, and we got our license in like 15 minutes. From somebody from California to go to the DMV and have it only take 50 minutes, unheard of. Absolutely unheard of.
It was an absolutely pleasant experience.
Yes, it was.
So now that you have your domicile set up and your new driver's license, it's time to register those vehicles.
For registering the truck and the fifth wheel, once again, we used Dakota Post. It was super easy, and we actually weren't even in the state when we had the registration done. Side note on the registration, in South Dakota, registration is not handled by the DMV. Your registration is done through the Department of Revenue in the county where you are domiciled.
The documents you need to send to Dakota Post were the title. Since we're coming from California, we didn't have the title, as in California, the lender holds the title until the vehicle is paid off. We contacted our loan company, and they sent the title to Dakota Post, who then submitted it to the Department of Revenue.
You also have to submit the name of the loan or the lender on your vehicles.
We also submitted a copy of the bill of sale.
You also need a validation of tax assessment. This form was obtained from Dakota Post. They sent it to us, and then we had to send it to the dealer that we bought our truck from and the dealer that we bought the trailer from. And what this is it's an affidavit that says that you paid sales tax on the vehicle. If you are coming from a state that had no sales tax, and when you purchased your vehicles, you didn't pay sales tax on them, just know that South Dakota is going to charge you a 4% excise tax on the purchase price of those vehicles.
You also have to fill out a vehicle pre-registration form that Dakota Post provided.
There's odometer disclosure, which just means that we had to take a picture of the odometer and send that to Dakota Post.
For the trailer, we also had to show the unloaded weight for the vehicle. We just took a picture of the the little, I don't know what you call it.
It's a placard. So
A little placard.
every trailer is going to have a placard on the side of it that shows the weights. We just took a picture of that and then sent that to Dakota Post. Once Dakota Post had all of the information that it needed, they actually went to the Department of Revenue and got our vehicles registered. The plates were sent to our postal mailbox and then forwarded on to us. We weren't even in South Dakota when we got our plates. We were back here in San Diego when they showed up.
So the last thing you want to do is actually develop professional and personal relationships in the state. This is not technically a requirement, but it will help you prove your connection to the state if your residency is ever challenged in court.
Yeah, if your former state comes back and goes, no, you're not a resident over there, you're a resident here and you owe us state income tax here, having these connections will help prove in court that you actually are domiciled in your new state.
I guess it's a good thing we have lots of video of us in our new state.
Yeah, right. For us, we're doing a few things to establish our professional connection. One of those is that we moved our corporation to South Dakota. This was a very easy process, and again, Dakota Post helped us with that. The main part of that was connecting us up with what's called a registered agent to help us move the business. We will also be looking into a tax professional in South Dakota to handle our personal and our corporate taxes. And then lastly, we've also been members of the Television Academy for years. So we are planning to move our membership in the Television Academy from the Pacific Southwest chapter up to the Upper Midwest chapter, which covers South Dakota.
For personal connections, you can join clubs, establish relationships with doctors, hair people, dentists, and other healthcare providers.
I never thought of the hair thing. When I wrote this, I wouldn't even think of a hairstyle.
You just go to any old barber.
I just go to any old barber.
All right, that covers this week's show. If you have any questions about how to domicile, please feel free to contact us, send us an email, leave a comment. We'll be happy to answer it. And if there's any information that we haven't provided you, let us know and we'll try to get that information to you.
And if you have other information that we haven't covered, please put it in the comments below. That way everybody gets a chance to learn from your knowledge.
All right, so what are we going to cover next week?
Well, you know what I'm going to tell you. Right after I tell you, could you please hit the like button, the thumbs up down there. If you got something out of this, please leave a comment below. That helps the algorithm for us. You can also subscribe, and if you want to know when our next video in the How to Full-Time RV series is coming out, click that notification bell. It will send you a notification when that happens. Next week, we will be covering insurance. What do we do for vehicle insurance for full-time RVers? Yes, there is special insurance, vehicle insurance for full-time RVers. And also, what do we do for our health insurance when we're out on the road? We're
going to add how we get our prescriptions, because yes, we have prescriptions.
All right, Gracie girl, you ready to say goodbye? Say goodnight, Gracie. We'll see you guys next week.